we begin, boys and girls, first and foremost, a good after morning. And good to see you. Welcome back again to another high-tech lesson with me, Mega Manoa. And today we're going to be talking about how animals are able to change and adapt to their environments, how they're able to survive. But before we even start, let's just make sure we have all of our materials that we will need for today. We need the bag that has a bowl and a whole bunch of stuff inside of there. There's some seeds, there's clay, there's some sand, and a whole bunch more stuff. That's the bag to grab. And then also from inside of the envelope, we need this piece of paper, which has a whole bunch of animals, and it says physical versus behavioral adaptation right on the top. That is what we need from the envelope. And then we also need, that is not included, some sort of cup of ice water. I'm gonna have my water separate, but I got a cup of ice. Eventually I'm gonna put it in there. We need some iced water. All right, so once you have all that, well, let's get started. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is, well, the environments that are around us, the places where animals and living things live. Well, they're always changing. And in order for an animal to survive in that environment, they need to do something called an adaptation. Okay, where basically they change something about themselves or they gotta leave. So if they don't adapt, if they don't change themselves, then they won't be able to survive.
What is an adaptation?
Great question. An adaptation is basically something that a living thing has or does to help it to survive in its habitat. Okay, so speaking of changing, well, there are two types of these adaptations, all right? There is physical adaptation and there is behavioral adaptation. And the simple way to think of it is the differences between them two is one, you either have or you're born with, which is the physical adaptation, and the other one is something that you do, okay? It's a behavior. That's why it's called behavioral adaptation. Okay, so something that you're born with or something that you have is something like, sharp teeth, or some animals have claws, right? Some animals have a really long neck, right? That's not something they went to Home Depot to buy, right? They don't go and get it and put it on themselves. It's something that they're born with, right? Or it's something that they already have. That's why it's a physical adaptation. Whereas with behavioral adaptation, it's something that they do. Like sometimes otters, they break open a seed with a rock. But they're not born with a rock, right? They have to do it. It's something that they do. It's a behavior, right? Or even sometimes monkeys, they go fishing with a stick. Well, they weren't born with a stick in their hand, right? Nope, that doesn't happen. Instead, well, they went to go get the stick. It's something that they did. And so since it's something that they do, that's a behavior. That's why we call it a behavioral adaptation. And so, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna play a little game to kind of differentiate and see the differences between physical adaptation and behavioral adaptation with the animals we're gonna take a look at. All right, so let's play a little game. Let's see again the differences between physical adaptation and behavioral adaptation. Just as a reminder, again, physical adaptation, just remember, if it's born with it or if it's something that it has, that's a physical adaptation. But behavioral adaptation, just remember one word, something that it does. If it does it, that's a behavioral adaptation. So let's take a look at this. So the way that this works is you see that there's a whole bunch of pictures, some writings next to it, and then there are two boxes to the right of the picture, right? Same thing over here, picture, writing, two boxes. So one of them on the very top, it says physical. So anything that you think is a physical adaptation, we're gonna put one of these seeds into this little tiny section. And then anything that you think is a behavioral adaptation, we put in the other one. So we need this piece of paper and we also need these seeds. All right, so let's go over each and every single one of these pictures. So the top left picture, we see that this insect, it looks like a stick for disguise. So, do you think that it's a physical adaptation, a behavioral adaptation? Well, if you think about it, is it something that it does? Did it go to the store to get a stick and look like it? No. It didn't do something to look like that. It was born like that. So that's the key word, right? If it's born like that, then it's a physical adaptation. So there we put on the physical side, on this side, not on that one, because that's behavioral. Then, if we look at the next one, we see here that this is a skunk, and the skunk sprays a strong chemical to ward off its predator, okay? And so, do you think that they went to, they went to a store to buy some of this strong chemical? No, it's something that they're born with. They already have that. And so, since they already have it, it's not a behavioral adaptation, that is a physical adaptation, all right? So let's look at the next one, right? So here we see that this is a picture of an otter, and otters, they swim on their backs and they use the rocks to crack open the shellfish, right? So, well, let's think about that. Do you think otters are born with rocks in their hand? So it's not something that they're born with, not a physical adaptation. That would be something that they do, a behavioral adaptation. Ta-da! Right, so then we have the next picture with a whole bunch of penguins, which it says, penguins, they huddle together during extremely cold weather and they have their backs towards the wind, okay? So, well, are they born with their backs towards each other? Is that how they're born? No, it's not a physical type of adaptation. It's something that they do to keep themselves nice and warm. Since they do it, that's a behavioral adaptation, right? So let's look at the last one on the bottom on the left here, okay, which it says that we see a picture of a frog. It says that this, it has camouflage skin that helps it to blend in with its surroundings, right? So do you think this frog went to Home Depot and bought some paint and put it on itself? No, it's not something that it did. It's something that it was born with. It was born looking like this. That's the key word for physical adaptation. Remember, born or do, right? Either or. That's how you could tell it's physical or behavioral. So now that you did one side, let's do the other side now, okay? So here on the top right side, we now have a picture of the Venus flytrap, in which it says that the Venus flytrap lures the insect with nectar and then closes in on them. So is this something that it learned to do? Did it go to school to learn how to do that? No. So it's not something that he did. This is something that he was born with. Okay, so this is a physical adaptation. All right, so next we look at the picture of the fish, and it writes here that they swim upstream in order to lay eggs in the river bed or the river's headwaters, okay? And well, are they born swimming upstream? It's something that they have to learn, something that they have to do, and hence that would be a behavioral adaptation. Then if you look at the next picture, we got an anteater, and it says that the anteater's long snout can get all the way down to the bottom of the ant mound, right? And so, do you think the anteater also went to Home Depot and bought a really long nose? Did it do that? No, it didn't do that. It was born with this long snout, and so since it's born with it, that is a physical adaptation. So next we have a picture of an orangutan, okay, a monkey. So this orangutan, it uses its stick to do a little fishing. Obviously, they're not born with a stick. They don't have sticks as soon as they're born. This is something that they learn, right? And so that would not be a physical adaptation, that would be a behavioral adaptation. And lastly, we got a picture of a bear, and it writes that bears hibernate in the winter to stay warm and conserve energy. Now, they're not born sleeping like that. It's something that they do to help themselves to survive in these harsh winter climates. So that is a type of behavior, a behavioral adaptation. So that's how we do this little game to find out the differences between physical adaptation and behavioral adaptation. Remember, the difference is, are they born with it? Is it something that they have? Or is it something that they do? That's the differences between these two types of adaptation. So far we've taken a look at a lot of animal adaptations, but did you know even plants have their own adaptations that help them to survive?
Plants have adaptations too?
Yeah, and one in particular that we're gonna look at lives in the desert. Now, first, about the desert's usually known to be a very lifeless and very barren type of place, but still we see a lot of animals flourishing, blooming, animals and plants, even though they barely get less than 10 inches of rain. Usually that's what we consider as a desert. So in this desert environment, there is one plant that we're gonna take a look at, which is called the Saguaro Cactus. Yeah, and this guy is amazing. Yeah, the Saguaro Cactus is able to survive there even though there's very little amount of water. The Saguaro Cactus can grow up to about 50 feet tall. That's really tall, and they could live to about 175 years. And the way that they're able to survive is what they do. You see, when you take a close look at the Saguaro Cactus, you got lines up and down all over on the trunk and on the arms, and it kind of acts kind of like an accordion, because when it's drinking up the water, it swells up, it gets bigger, so it can contain and retain all of that water, okay? And what's amazing is that they can retain up to 95% of their weight in water. That's a lot of water. It soaks in and he keeps it all in because you never know when it's gonna rain again. So it soaks that all in, right? And then also on the outside, on the skin, I guess you could say, of these Saguaro cactus, they have a waxy substance, some waxy cuticle to keep it from being sunburned, right? They don't have a local store to buy some sunscreen, right? Of course, so they have that waxy cuticle right on the outside to keep them from being sunburned, and also to keep the water from evaporating, right? Because they want to keep as much water as possible. And not only that, well, as you know, cactus are usually known for being very spiky, right? So they got a whole bunch of spikes to discourage any animals, you know, to come and take a nibble at them. Don't want that to happen, so that's why they have spikes, right? But they don't just have all of these adaptations to help themselves, they also help other animals. As an example, they help bats and moths and other insects, because at night their white waxy flowers blossom, which these, you know, moths and bats come over to, you know, drink the nectar, right? But not only that, also in July they bear fruit. What? I didn't know there was a fruit from a cactus. Pretty cool, huh? So when they bear fruit in July, it becomes food for birds, even rodents, and people. So again, we see that the Saguaro cactus has, you know, been able to adapt to this harsh environment, but also it really helps out the desert ecosystem, as we call it, which is everything else around it, right? So now, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make our very own Saguaro cactus. All right, so now we are going to make our Saguaro cactus. So these are the parts that we will need. We need that container, plastic container, the bag of clay, the bag of sand, some little tiny tissue papers here. There's a little toothpick and a larger pointy stick, and also some glow-in-the-dark critters. And so with that being said, let's make our Saguaro cactus. So first, take your clay and take it out of the bag. This can be a little bit tricky taking this out. So what I like to do is I like to kind of push from the bottom so that it comes out of that hole. Of course, we got to keep it open, but just if you push it from the bottom and kind of unwrap it from the top, it becomes a little bit easier to push out of this bag, okay? Kind of like peeling a banana, if you would. Then what we want to do is, with this piece of clay, you just want to roll it in between your fingers forwards and backwards. So see how it's in between my hands? Then just kind of roll it forwards and backwards while you're pushing. Don't just kind of give it a massage. You gotta push, you gotta push it. And while you're pushing it, you'll notice that it's getting longer. Now, the length that we want it is about the length of your hand, from the bottom of your hand to your middle finger, okay? So my hand's a little bit bigger than yours, so I'm gonna put mine from the bottom of my hand to my pinky, since my hand's a little bit bigger than yours. But for you guys, I would say from the bottom of your hand to the top of your middle finger. And as you can see, it's about that height. So this is actually a pretty good height. So you don't want it too long. This is about a good height. Again, about the length of your hand. So with that being said, then what we want to do is we want to split this not in half, but just a quarter of it. So to find that, find the halfway point, and then find the halfway point of that, which is right here in between, right there. See? So I'm just going to break off that little piece right there. Then what you want to do here is we want to take that big piece, well, the little piece I put to the side, but the big piece we're gonna stick it right onto here because this is gonna be the trunk of our Saguaro cactus. Then what we want to do is you just want to push down. Now, it would help if you don't hold it on the top, but hold it on the very bottom. And just take your fingers and kind of hold it while pushing it down. So while you're pushing it down, it's gonna kind of flatten the bottom and it's gonna make it kind of stick to our little tray and have it to the point where you could very gently move your tray and it won't topple over, okay? You see how that is? And if it's still kind of leaning a little bit too much or it's about to fall over, then push down a little bit more. That's how you kind of gauge it. And again, you don't want it too tall, but also you don't want it too short. So, kind of want it there. Again, the way I kind of test it is if I tilt it, is it gonna fall over? If not, good. All right, so that's gonna be the trunk of our Saguaro cactus, but then we need the arms, right? So with this small little piece of clay, you wanna do the same thing. Put it in between your hands and roll it forwards and backwards, okay? Now this one, you could make as long as you want. I'm gonna make it about the same size as the other one, right? About the size of my hand here. And you could either break it into 2 pieces or into 3. I'm gonna do it just into 2. Okay, and these are gonna be the arms, kind of like that. Kind of like our Saguaro cactus, right? So we don't want it to just make a Y like that. You kind of want it to bend over, but first we gotta attach it. Okay, so how do we attach it? Please don't just stick it on like that because it's just gonna fall, okay? This one we need to be very careful in making sure that it's stuck onto there. So how do we do that? The same way. You wanna hold close to the part where you're gonna push in and you really gotta press onto that clay so that it sticks on and doesn't fall over. But remember, Saguaro cactus don't have just hands going, ugh. It kind of curves a little bit. So just want to make it like that. See? Pretty cool. There goes one arm, and make sure again that it's not gonna fall. Make sure you've pushed it on there that it won't fall over. And we're gonna do the same thing with the other side, right? Just make sure you push it as hard as you can onto there so it sticks, right? And then have it curve a little bit, so just bend the arm. And make sure you stuck it on there. And we got something like that. Ta-da! Now, remember, the Saguaro cactus have those lines up and down all over, kind of like an accordion, so that whenever they drink the water, it's able to plump up, stretch, so it could contain all of that water. So that's where we're going to take our little toothpick to draw those lines. You could take that and draw the line from the bottom to the top, like that. This. Just like that, okay? Get really artistic. And then you could do the same thing with the arms. Same thing with the other. And you can do the same thing on the back side. But for now, I just want to show you how we could look on this side, okay? So we got ourselves our cactus with all the different types of lines, okay? And then just another thing that we want to do on our cactus is we want to put some flowers, right? They have those waxy white flowers that are on there at night, that blossom at night. So the way that we do this is we're going to take a tissue, wrap it on the pointy end of your pointy stick. So just put it right on there and then just take your fingers and just wrap it around. Once you wrap it around, poke it into the cactus, hold it together and poke it in. And it would help if you hold the cactus just a little bit, poke it in, and then if you take it out, oh, isn't it cute? It's got a little tiny flower. Then do the same thing with the next one, right? Poke it, or not poke it, but put it on the tip and wrap it around. See that? Just wrap that around the pointy stick, Then what you want to do, you could put it on another spot. I'm gonna put it on the arm. Let me try it right here. Poke it in, and then it's easy able to take it out. It looks just like a flower. Okay, you can put it wherever. This last one, gonna do the same thing, right? Wrap it around the pointy stick. And you don't have to put it on these places. You can put it on the bottom, wherever, put it in the middle like this. And see, we got ourselves our cool little saguaro cactus. But remember, they live in the desert, right? And so, it being the desert, we're gonna put some sand around it. All right, so go ahead and open up your bag of sand and just very gently spread it around the bottom. Don't put it all in one spot, spread it evenly everywhere. And that is good, all right? Then, lastly, we're gonna put our glow-in-the-dark critters on there. That way, they can be, glowing in the dark. You could keep this right next to your bed. When you turn off the lights, you got the glow-in-the-dark critters on there to be able to see at night. And you got yourself your saguaro cactus. Pretty cool, right? Now, many animals have adapted themselves to many different climates and many different temperatures. Like animals have fur and stuff like that to keep them nice and warm. But what about the animals that live in the ocean, especially the cold waters? How does Jimmy survive in there? Well, the thing is, one of their adaptations that they have is that they have a layer of fat called blubber around their bodies that help to insulate them against the cold, right? Animals like whales and seals, among other types of mammals, they have that layer of fat, that blubber that's around their body that keeps the cold water from ever getting inside of their bodies. Okay, so that's what's so amazing about this blubber, which keeps them nice and warm, even though they are in really cold water.
Wow, that's amazing!
Yeah, I know, right? Now let's see how that works. All right, so now let's see how blubber works, how that layer of fat around them really keeps the cold from getting into their bodies. So these are the parts that we will be needing. We need that water, the ice, and also this blubber. It's basically vegetable shortening. Also this bag of salt and a glove, okay? So, of course, we need the water inside of the ice, so go ahead and take your water and put it right inside of there. And after that, I would actually go ahead and put on your, your gloves, okay? So go ahead and put it on one of your hands. Ta-da! Mine is very tight, but yours is probably nice and loose because your hands are a lot bigger or smaller, whichever one. But in any case, we want to take our salt and put it inside of here, which kind of makes it just a little bit colder. Okay, don't need to do too much with that. Now, as you can guess, this is pretty cold, right? But we're gonna use our blubber, basically the vegetable shortenings here, to help us to understand how it really does help. The blubber really does help them to stay nice and warm, and the cold water, you can't even feel it, okay? So inside of this bag is another bag. Whoa! And that's where it really is. But inside of this bag is your blubber. Do not take it out, okay? You don't want to take anything out. All we need to do is just open it and stick your finger in. That's it, okay? Don't take it out, don't scoop it out. Just take your finger, put it inside, and wrap it around your fingers, okay? So that's what we're gonna do here. I'm gonna open this up and try not to touch it with the hand that doesn't have the gloves on, because this stuff can be very oily and it doesn't feel good, okay? So I'm just gonna take one finger and put it inside, and then with my other finger, I'm not gonna touch anything inside, but from the outside, which has no oily parts, I'm gonna kind of morph this blubber around my finger that's inside of there, okay? So that really covers my finger. See that? So I'm just making sure I'm moving it around so that it's covering all parts. Check on all angles to see if it's covering all over. If you see still a little piece of your finger, make sure you cover it. But I think that's good. As you can see, I've covered it all over. Remember, I stuck the whole bag on my finger. I didn't take anything out. Now, we're gonna try to see if this really does help, if this layer of blubber really helps me to not feel the cold. Well, first thing you want to do is try with the finger that doesn't have the blubber, right? So with your finger, your other finger, stick it in and see if you can feel the cold. Let's see, ready? Oh, that's cold. Yeah, I definitely can feel the cold. But what about this one? Maybe. Let's see if it actually is gonna work. Let's see. Whoa. I can't feel anything. I don't feel anything cold at all. This is great. Yeah, you can see how amazing it is to be a whale or a seal or one of those animals that have these blubber and still be in such cold water. They're never cold because they got this layer of blubber to insulate them against that cold water, which is pretty cool. And after you're done, what I like to do is I like to just take off my entire glove, just keep the bag inside, and nothing is messy. Ta-da! But in any case, boys and girls, today we've talked about a whole bunch of things about adaptations, right? Changes that they've done or that they're born with, right? We call those adaptations, right? And we saw all sorts of things from animals, not just animals, but even plants. So amazing things. And I hope you guys had a lot of fun with us. This has been Mega Manoa, and until next time, I will see you at home.